Tonight, the invitation to a meeting at Grenfell that had the potential to save lives. A concerned councillor wanted to show bosses how residents could be trapped in a fire. At the inquiry today, one said they don't remember. Also ahead, fears for the mother of a baby girl found dead in a canal.
Our overwhelming priority is to identify Mum and help her get the care and support that she needs. We would urge her to contact police.
A crackdown on pet thefts is announced by the government, but does it go far enough? And not pale and stale. The generation of ale fans making brewing big again. Good evening. We are now familiar with the many warnings of a potential tragedy at Grenfell Tower. Today we heard another. Almost 8 years before the fire that killed 72 people, a councillor wrote to those responsible for the building asking them to meet her there. She wanted to show them how residents could potentially be trapped during an evacuation. Her warnings came after a fire at Lakanal House in Camberwell the day before. Earlier, the Grenfell Inquiry heard the invitation was never taken up. Rags Martel reports.
A deadly cladding fire. But this was Lakanal House in Camberwell 8 years before Grenfell. 6 people died here. But immediately, Kensington and Chelsea were given a specific warning that residents would have trouble escaping the tower in the fire.
Is it fair to say that from the time of the Lakanal House fire, you were personally aware that there was a serious concern, or at least a serious concern that had been expressed, about the adequacy of the means of escape from Grenfell Tower?
I'm aware of it, that it was raised in this particular email, but I don't remember being continually aware of it throughout my time as Director of Housing at RBKC.
This was the email the council received the day after the Lakanal House fire. It highlights the issues of the means of escape in the event of a fire, and Grenfell is specifically mentioned. The Director of Housing was also invited to the top of the tower to see the problem herself.
Did you take up Councillor Blakeman's invitation to accompany her to the top floor of Grenfell Tower?
I don't believe I did.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Did you specifically direct anyone at the TMO to undertake a risk assessment of the means of escape in TMO-managed tower blocks?
I don't remember if I did, but I'm afraid I don't remember.
It also emerged there was confusion in the council about who had responsibility for fire safety. Kensington and Chelsea wrongly thought it lay in the hands of their outsourced tenant management organisation, but in fact, both of them had that responsibility.
That's quite a significant misunderstanding, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you account for how that arose?
No.
Was your view that RBKC was not the responsible person one, to your knowledge, that was generally held throughout RBKC?
Yes.
Outside the inquiry, a demonstration against Laura Johnson. The protesters said they had a personal experience of what they call her indifference. And as a former director of housing, she was responsible to sign everything off, they claim. Miss Johnson is expected to finish her evidence tomorrow. Rags Martel, ITV News at the Grenfell Inquiry.
Police are again urging the mother of a newborn baby found dead in a canal in northwest London to get medical help. The infant was found in the water near Old Oak Lane between Willesden and Park Royal on Sunday. Jonathan Brown is there for us this evening. Jonathan, what more do we know?
Well, in the last couple of hours, police have given us more information as to just how this baby was left here in the hope that it will help them identify its mother. We now know that this was a baby girl and that she was left between the two boats that you can see downstream. She was wrapped in a pink towel. Now, officers were first called here to the Grand Union Canal near Willesden on Sunday afternoon by a paddleboarder who had spotted that pink towel. But when they arrived, paramedics pronounced the baby girl dead. Now, since then, police say that they've been doing everything in their power to try to get in touch with the baby's mother, who is still at this moment unknown, because they say they are desperately concerned about her welfare.
We're really worried about Mum's physical and mental well-being and feel that she is in need of immediate care and support. So our overwhelming priority is to identify Mum and help her get the care and support that she needs. I'd also like to make an appeal to any family relatives or friends of Mum who may have noticed something different about Mum's physical appearance or demeanour over the last few weeks or days.
Well, police say that this towpath is normally very busy with runners and walkers. They say somebody must have seen something that will help them identify the baby's mother, who they are desperate to make sure is OK.
Jonathan, thank you. Police have released images of two men they want to speak to in relation to an attempted robbery in Holborn. The victim, in his 30s, was grabbed by a man and sprayed in the face with an unknown substance as he walked through Bloomsbury Square. While he was on the floor, he was then approached by another man pretending to be a police officer. Both men then attempted to steal his belongings. And a man who tried to frame his landlord's partner as being involved in the Westminster terror attack has been convicted of perverting the course of justice. 67-year-old Gerald Banyard sent 2 handwritten notes to police days after the attack saying another person might be involved. He was convicted today in his absence and a warrant has been issued for his arrest. At the Brits last night, the biggest cheers weren't for Taylor Swift or Elton John, but instead the NHS workers singled out for all they have done over the last year. As Dua Lipa accepted one of her statuettes, she paid tribute to Dame Elizabeth Anyonwu, a professor of nursing at the University of West London. She also called for a fair pay rise for NHS staff. Ria Chatterjee reports.
My best British female of the year is Dame Elizabeth Anyonwu.
I have to be honest, I actually wasn't watching the Brits.
She has spent her stellar nursing career fighting racial injustice and is a strong advocate for protecting frontline workers.
Dame Elizabeth Anyonwu was born a year before the NHS was founded. 16 years later, she joined the institution as a nurse.
I mean, Brits, come on. To come on the eve of International Nursing Day, really, I had a lump in my throat, actually.
I can see,
yes.
It means a lot to you. Do you feel a tension between these public celebrations, Clap for Carers, for example, and actually the reality for nurses on the ground, particularly over the last year and a half during the pandemic?
There's a degree of tension because I think if we had the claps and the pay, there wouldn't be an issue. If I'm sick, particularly if I have to go into hospital or even sick at home, if I don't have access to nurses, what's going to happen? I think that tells you all you need to know about the worth of nurses and that they should jolly well be paid for it. Value nurses.
And values have been important to Dame Elizabeth. Her own informed the pioneering work she did for an institution designed to serve all. In 1979, she set up the first sickle cell screening centre, a condition which predominantly affects people from African and Caribbean backgrounds. Coronavirus, she recognises, was not the great leveller, as many suggested early on.
If you look at certain groups within our society, you know that they don't have as much pay. They're in poorer housing, etc., etc. You then bring on COVID-19, which just... It makes absolute sense, sadly, that certain groups of people have been more vulnerable to severe illness and death, and that fits in with certain sections of black and minority health workers.
A government spokesperson highlighted the fact there has been a pay rise for NHS workers, adding that the country's in a difficult economic situation.
Give Boris a message that we all support a fair pay rise for our frontline.
Dua Lipa ending that report from Ria Chatterjee. At the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, the government announced plans for tougher rules on animal welfare. They include a crackdown on pet theft after an increase in dogs being stolen and compulsory microchipping for cats. But for some owners, the measures don't do enough to protect our family pets. Chloe Keedy reports.
Hey, Poppet. Out we come.
Zippy the cat is one of the newest residents at this RSPCA shelter in Finsbury Park. The vets here don't know where his real home is because until now, Zippy didn't have a microchip.
There we go. The majority of the cats that we get brought to us as strays aren't microchipped. There are a lucky few. Generally, if the microchip is in place and the details are up to date, then we can find an owner and we can get them reunited.
Their job should be about to get easier. Under the government's new animal welfare plan, microchipping your pet cat will be compulsory, just as it already is for dogs. It's one of a range of reforms announced by the Environment Secretary. And what better place to do it than Battersea Dogs and Cats Home?
Well, he looks very happy. There's a really important overarching policy that we have here, which is to recognise that animals are sentient beings, and recognising that to have a new animal sentience committee that will scrutinise government policy in future.
The government is also promising to tackle the rise in puppy smuggling and pet theft with a change to import rules, ban remote-controlled training collars, to end the export of live animals for slaughter, and give the police more powers to protect farm animals from dangerous or out-of-control dogs.
Good boy.
But for Emma Gambrill, that doesn't go far enough. 2 months ago, she was walking her dog Blue near her home in Enfield when he was set upon and killed by 2 dogs that had escaped from their owner's garden.
Why you can differentiate between livestock and dogs, I have no idea.
Emma is campaigning for dog-on-dog attacks to be made a criminal offence for the owner.
Be it that they have to go on a training course, be it that they have to be assessed thoroughly. It's about that accountability, that if your dog does attack, that you have accountability and you're responsible. Have a walk.
But Emma says the fact she's now scared to take her dog Bailey for a walk is proof that the government's new action plan does not do enough to protect pets. Chloe Keedy, ITV News, Enfield.
Next tonight, just under a year ago, Black Lives Matter protests started in the capital after the murder of George Floyd in America. Since then, racism has been the subject of much debate here, but it's harder to see what has changed. Tonight on ITV, Sir Trevor MacDonald and our own Charlene White look at that very issue.
I feel like the past year has been a little bit of a watershed moment, and I know amongst my friends and amongst my family there are conversations that they have been having with their friends and their extended families and their colleagues, for example, that perhaps they had never had before.
We're talking about it.
Yeah.
I have no real idea what the future will bring. You know, societies never stay static for too long. There are movements. So I think change is inevitable in many ways. Precisely how it will happen and how quickly it will happen, you know, I have no idea. But it will.
Charlene, welcome to the other side of your desk.
It does feel quite strange being here, actually.
It's lovely to be talking to you, though. There have been lots of conversations and debates over the last year in London about racism. Is all that talking now translating into change and action, do you think?
Well, that's one thing that we do look at in this programme. I mean, we cover things like education, we cover sport, we look at the issue of history and statues, for example, and whether, when we had all of those people take to the streets of London and around the rest of the UK last year, whether the things that they were calling for has it led to anything. I wouldn't say there's one clear answer to that, but I think everybody would agree that there are certain subjects that tend to not get as much exposure historically, which are definitely getting exposure now. Statues been a very good example of that, and I think just about every institution has had to take time to reflect and look at where they stand and what they can do in terms of trying to further the cause of equality.
In terms of the capital, from all of your interviews and the things you saw, what really sticks in your mind? What really struck you?
Well, we talked to a school in London about the changes they've made to their curriculum as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement, but we also talked to Bianca Williams. Regular viewers will remember that we have covered Bianca's story before when she was speaking about when she was pulled over by the police with her partner, Ricardo, and their 3-month-old baby. And I think what was quite striking for me, sitting and having that conversation with her, was just how she still feels quite scarred by the whole situation.
You're a journalist, but you're also living this and experiencing it. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think anyone who sort of follows me on social media has seen me do sessions with many schools across the capital, as I've done for the last 20 years, sort of talking about race and the need for equality, yes, when it comes to race, but also gender and sexuality, for example. It's an interesting journey, I think, for everyone when it comes to those sorts of honest conversations. But for me, it's just an exaggeration of what it is that I do anyway. I think what we find as British people is we tend to be really quite uncomfortable when it comes to difficult conversations. We just don't like it. And then when you put that extra layer of race on top of it, it makes people feel even more uncomfortable.
One of the things about doing this job is you get instant feedback. I think you get about 1,000 times more than I do. One of the things that's clear is sometimes people are tired of this and they don't feel connected to the conversation. How do you feel about that when you read those kinds of messages?
Well, I always put it down to not everybody is two things. Not everybody is ready for change at the same period in history. History has shown that, and that the fight for the women for the vote is a good example of that. But also when it comes to online abuse in all forms on social media, I think what people have to remember is basic manners. And what you yell at somebody on social media, you wouldn't necessarily yell at somebody in the street. And people need to remember that, because actually we are decent people and we have that sort of British stiff upper lip, and we tend to live our lives being very gentlemanly. That's sort of what we do. But why on earth some people, and a small minority of people, feel like they can't do that on social media is beyond me.
Charlene, your programme Has George Floyd Changed Britain is on at 9 o'clock tonight. Thank you. We'll be watching. This is quite nice.
It is.
Should we bring this
lovely.
back?
We totally should.
The bosses are watching. Thank you very much. Still to come, we'll have the weather for you, plus...
For everything I long to do.
I'll be speaking to a key worker who was in the audience at the Brits last night. But first, the Duke of Cambridge visited Croydon Custody Centre today to pay tribute to Sergeant Matt Ratner, who was shot and killed at work last September as he prepared to search a suspect. Prince William listened as colleagues and friends shared their memories of the officer, described as the heart and soul of the station. Sam Holder reports.
This was a moment of reflection and a show of emotional support. The Duke of Cambridge remembering Sergeant Matt Ratner. The police officer was shot while on duty at the Croydon Custody Centre in September. For his colleagues, the pandemic has made grieving even harder. The message from the Duke: look after each other.
So that's why I want to make sure that all of you take the time to process it, because it does take time to come through.
One of those the Duke spoke to was Stephen, Matt's close friend. He completed this gym at the station in memory of Sergeant Ratner, who was a fitness fanatic.
A lovely guy. You'd meet him for 2 minutes and you'd think you've met him for your whole life. You think you've known him forever, like your best friend. He'd just light up a room. He'd make friends with everyone and anyone. He wouldn't care who you were. You wouldn't want to meet a nicer guy in your lifetime.
The past few months have been traumatic for this station. Today's royal support means a lot.
For him to actually make an effort out of his day to come and just meet the Croydon police has really been really nice. I'm really impressed by that. I'm sure it'll send good positive vibes through everyone who works here.
The timing of the visit is symbolic during Mental Health Awareness Week.
This is a tough job. It can be a traumatic job, and we need to be really good at looking after ourselves and each other. And His Royal Highness is so passionate about that that I think it was very helpful for people to hear from him about that subject, and also for him to be able to pay his respects.
Since September, the team has had multiple visits from PD Dexter, the Met's first well-being dog. It's all part of the police's efforts to improve mental health and support. Sergeant Matt Ratner has left a massive hole here. Today was a chance for colleagues to share memories, express their pain and celebrate their friend with a royal audience. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Now, he's known to many as Speedo Mick, the man famous for completing gruelling challenges for charity in little more than his swimming trunks. In 2019, Mick set off on a 1,000-mile journey from John O'Groats to Land's End, the entire length of Great Britain. He finished the 78-day challenge in February last year, just before lockdown hit. Now, Mick Cullen wants to share his story of struggle and the difficulties he faced in isolation with his mental health.
My name's Michael, aka Speedo Mick, and I've been suffering from mental health issues from the beginning of the pandemic.
It's snowing. We're on our way to Inverness, but you're all jealous, aren't you?
Just being on a massive fundraiser, which was a big success. I'd exhausted myself mentally, physically and emotionally anyway, and then we come straight into lockdown. I've never experienced being that low in the 19 years of being in recovery, to be honest, and I seriously considered suicide, basically. I asked my brother, I told my brother how I was feeling in the end, and left to my own devices, I honestly think it would have turned out really, really badly. But that was the first time in months that I'd actually spoke to somebody about how I was feeling. Well, the fundraising it's given me a purpose. It's given me a massive purpose, and it just gets me emotional, to be honest, thinking about it, because it's a massive part of my life. You know what I mean? And doing that fundraising and doing the good stuff. I never had anything to live for a long, long time before coming into recovery. You just can't think your way out of mental health. Just basically talking saves people's lives. Talking to other people saves people's lives, and it certainly saved mine.
Mick Cullen there, and there are lots of tips and advice on our website for how you can start conversations with friends and family about mental health. It's all part of ITV's Get Britain Talking campaign. Just search for ITV London online. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the Brits took place last night in front of a special audience of NHS workers. It was the biggest indoor event of its kind for more than a year, and there was no need for social distancing or masks. Let's find out what it was like by speaking to Iman Kasara. She helps with the vaccination programme. Iman, how did it feel?
It felt so amazing to be part of it, especially since it's such an important event, being at the Brits. And one of the first major indoor events as well. It felt really extra special, and I just felt amazing to be there.
Were you nervous at all? Because I think I'd feel quite anxious about being around so many people now.
I was more excited than nervous, because this is the first time in a long time we could actually be indoors and be surrounded by people with no masks, no social distancing. So I had the time of my life. I didn't feel nervous at all, especially because they asked us to do a test, COVID test, 36 hours before. So everyone in there tested negative, and so I felt completely safe.
And tell us how you got your tickets.
I actually won them, which was so mad because I didn't expect to win. I just applied because they were giving away 2,500 to key workers, and I applied and I won, and it's just crazy. So that's how I got there.
Apart from being inside with all those people, what were your highlights of the show?
I definitely enjoyed all the performances, especially seeing Dua Lipa and all the dancers were there was so good, and Hedy won as well. I was so surprised that they had major international people there like Taylor Swift and Harry Styles, and so it was good that they actually got involved with this as well. And you know, it was sort of such a major thing that I was part of. I feel so grateful.
And do you help on the admin side of the vaccination programme? When I went to get my first jab done, it felt like a really special and quite poignant moment. Do you feel that when you go into work, or has it become quite routine now?
Yeah, it feels very important being there, because every single jab we do is a step closer to getting back to normality. So I feel really happy that I work there. Yeah, I'm an admin person, so I just have to make people feel comfortable and get their medical history and prepare them before the jab. So I feel like, yeah, I really enjoy my work.
Iman, you totally deserved those tickets last night. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And England's Euro 2020 matches are to be shown on giant screens in Trafalgar Square, with key workers getting free tickets. The fan zone will be set up in the square to allow spectators to watch England's 3 group games, plus the 2 semi-finals and the final. Well, it better not be raining, because, Sally, it is not feeling like mid-May.
I know, and I'm not sure we're going to feel like we're in mid-May for, well, certainly past mid-May. Aren't you glad that it's not last year? Can you imagine? We'd be so depressed with this weather. Anyway, here we go. This is the way it is. Tomorrow is looking not too bad at times, but there's a bit of rain coming in. It's quite cloudy. Friday should be a little bit better. Let's take a look.
making the most of it whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
So another mixture out there today. A few showers around, some brighter spells, pretty much summed up by the clouds behind this lovely rose. And thank you to Sue for spotting these gorgeous cygnets with their very proud parent. So the weather over the next few days, a bit unsettled and changeable. Tomorrow is looking quite cloudy and damp at times, a bit drier perhaps on Thursday, and as we head into the weekend we will see the return of those showers. It's also a little bit cooler. Average temperature for this time of year should be about 18. We're just below that, and without those sunny spells, not feeling quite as pleasant as it could do. So this evening there's a fair bit of dry weather to begin with. As we go through the night, increasing amounts of cloud, and we will see a few showers passing through as well. Most of them should be fairly light. The temperatures are quite mild though, in some areas staying up into double figures. So not too chilly to start tomorrow morning, but pretty grey. And as you can see with all that cloud, we will get a few showers passing through as well. And through the day, as we progress, some of that rain might become a little bit more persistent. Into the afternoon, starting to improve to the south of London, but still some rain around into the middle part of the afternoon. Temperatures quite chilly as well. Highs of only 14 to 15 degrees without that sunshine. Now, by the time we get to the evening, looking a bit drier to the south at the moment, but the north just clinging on to possibly a bit more rain. And then for Friday, looking drier, still quite cloudy, might be the odd shower here or there. As we move into the weekend, we see the return of those showers, as I said, and some of them might be heavy. There might be some brighter spells for Sunday and Monday. It's breezy at times and a bit cooler as well. And that's your full forecast for now.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
And you dodged the showers today by having a drink inside, is that right?
I know, it sounds very dodgy, not just dodging towers, that sounds dodgy. And I did for a very special reason, because Age UK in Lambeth has had threefold the number of calls during the pandemic. So a local brewery did the right thing and made a very special beer for people with a very special message as well. It would have been rude not to try it, and so I did.
For Peter, Mary and Bruce, age is inconsequential.
Cheers, good health.
Beer, on the other hand,
all the best, down the hatch, very good health.
This beer in particular does matter.
Yeah, I could soon take to that.
Simply called Generation, it's not only raising money for Age UK in Lambeth, but trying to bust any ageing stereotypes with this video.
Someone might say to me, "Oh, Bruce, you don't look your age." And rather than kind of take that as some kind of intended compliment, I go, hang on a minute, this is what my age looks like.
All three are in their 60s. Bruce and Mary have a dance group, and Peter was scouted as a model just 2 years ago.
Well, I can't tell you exactly what I said, because it contains a few expletives. But he said he was serious, and I went in for an audition. And subsequently I've been doing a few gigs ever since.
He's modelled for Vivienne Westwood, while Mary has danced with Rod Stewart.
I mean, I have to confess I was one of many.
Don't worry about the detail.
So if you want, you can give the malt a bit of a taste. It's kind of sweet and crunchy. Oh, really? Yeah, absolutely. How about it? Yeah.
And just grab some.
Yeah, just grab some, give it a go.
Thank you.
And it has a kind of, you might recognise the flavour from beer or from bread or anything with kind of...
Brixton Brewery created this when they heard that demand for Age UK Lambeth services had tripled.
It was a 233% increase in demand for their services over lockdown. We thought, do you know what, it would actually be really nice if we could do something to help them out and to bring all the generations together.
Age UK are thrilled with the money and the message. And after a drink, Bruce and Mary taught me some moves, dancing as one generation. The beer clearly doing exactly what it says on the tin. Sally Williams, ITV News, Brixton.
Sally gets all the tough gigs, see? That's the way it's looking. We're back with the latest after news at 10. Coming up, Mary with the ITV Evening News. But from me and the rest of the London team, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.